Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, and this is part of my 21 Days of Magic series. In this series, I interview amazing Black women every single day for 29 straight days for about 3 months. And today, I am so delighted to have Ericka Pittman, who is the managing director of Epitome Solutions. She has a remarkable career story. I cannot wait for you all to take a listen. Hi, Ericka.
Hi, how are you?
Good, causing trouble, interviewing people all day long. It is.
Well, what's a life without a little trouble?
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned, first questions always say answers are always so intriguing, and I'm sure yours will be no different. So, Ericka, what was your first job?
Interestingly enough, my very first job, I was in high school. I was the assistant to the president of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I don't know how I ended up landing such a big title, but
I was gonna say, like that's pretty baller for.
it was pretty epic. Actually, he was the vice president of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, but it was pretty amazing. I don't know if they just needed someone to support him during an interim, role placement, but somehow I ended up being his direct support, and it was amazing.
Like, that's awesome.
I don't even know if it was legal in hindsight. I certainly was part of a program.
I don't think this is illegal.
Yeah, because the reality is, well, okay, so I was 16 and I did work full time, but just through the summer. So, I guess it fell under summer hours. I don't know how it worked out, but it was fantastic. And I made like $18 an hour, and this is like 1992 or three. So, that was really like $25 an hour.
You're like, I'm balling.
Yeah, I was balling that summer. It was really good, but it gave me a lot of insight into sort of professional acumen very, very early on, and that was really helpful, I think, once I started to pursue my career.
So, okay, after you were like a big baller at the Port Authority and you were like, making tons and tons of cash, how do we go from there to your just having a chat with me right now? What was that career journey like?
Yeah, I think it was pretty serendipitous for me. I was always focused on, making money early on in my career. And I remember being in college and deciding that it was actually easier to take night courses. The professors were just more amicable and the syllabuses were incredibly straightforward. And I said, you know what, I'm going to start. Yeah, I think it was they just knew they had professionals and people that had, daytime priorities. And so the professors were just a lot more straightforward in night classes. And so actually just preferred that. And I had all of this daytime downtime that I wasn't using and decided I could work full time in the field that I was majoring in, which at the time was marketing and advertising. I have a corporate communications degree. And I found a job working as an administrative assistant and in the ad department of a website called ivillage.com, which was one of the first websites and destinations for women on the web in 1996. It was a lot of fun. I learned so much, and I was able to apply all of these theories I was learning in school into real life practice. And so it really helped me with my studies. It helped me within my career, and I quickly got on the dual track train.
Awesome. Now I have to hear it. Then what?
And then from there, I was there for about 4 years, and I ran across a magazine called Honey Magazine, which was at the time a magazine focused on African American female fashion and beauty. It was sort of like the younger version of Essence at the time. And I was really intrigued by the book, and I was working on some independent projects with some friends of mine. We had a company called Madison Marketing Inc., and it was based in DC. My friends went to school in Maryland, and we did a lot of events with a huge club owner and promoter in DC called Mark Barnes. And we were doing a Howard Homecoming event, and Ananda Lewis was on the cover of Honey Magazine. And so it was my dream to have her host our event and have Honey Magazine be the media partner. And so I literally wrote them letters and reached out
Wow.
to everybody in the company through their masthead. And they sent down their marketing coordinator, and she was so impressed with the way that we executed the event, the sort of the star-studded attendees, and it was just a very well thought out program. She said, "Send me your resume. I want to share it with some folks." And she literally shared my resume with every senior executive in the organization. And they saw that I had the iVillage experience on my resume, and they were launching a series of websites of their own. And so they hired me to come on board. And that was sort of the start of my publishing career. So I worked at Vanguard Media for about 2 years on Honey, Heart and Soul, and Savoy magazines. That company, unfortunately, went defunct, I would say maybe 2 years into my career there. And I was recruited Time Inc. and worked in their parenting group with a magazine called Baby Talk, and sold advertising there, did really, really well. Got recruited at Condé Nast to work at Glamour magazine. I did incredibly well there. And then I continued to get recruited to a number of different lifestyle magazines within the industry, like Vibe magazine. There was a book called Giant, and a few other really great ones. And so I did that for about 15 years. And honestly, I got burned out with selling advertising in the African American space, because it was like this uphill battle, constant education in the marketplace about the value of the African American consumer. And to be honest with you, print was becoming an antiquated medium in the media mix in terms of buying advertising. One of the things that I also realized is what was making me so successful in the sales realm was the marketing aspect. And I was realizing I was able to create strategy for a lot of my clients utilizing the tools that we had in our arsenal on the publishing side. And so I decided to start taking informational interviews to figure out how I could make that jump from marketing to advertising, because most people that I knew had gone to Kellogg or, had MBAs and credentials to sort of quantify marketing roles at the level I was at my career at the time. And I decided that wasn't going to be my story, and that I had enough tactical and practical experience to be able to transition. And through a series of no's and, that's not it, you got to go work in the mailroom and work your way up, and a lot of different things, I had a really amazing informational interview with a woman by the name of Amani Duncan, who at the time was the CMO of Bad Boy Worldwide Entertainment Group.
Oh wait, you
And
know
I do know Amani Duncan very well. She's
oh,
one
we're
of my favorite
so
professional
funny.
colleagues.
Oh wow. Love
So
Amani.
Amani hired me at Blue Flame.
Oh wow.
Absolutely, in 2009. And we started out as an informational interview, and she's asking me all these questions, and she's tick-tocking away on her keyboard while I'm talking, and like feverishly, eyes bright, in true Amani style. And, I don't know what she's doing, but she's clearly engaged in a dialogue, but focused on something else on her computer. And so by the time she had asked me, what does my dream job look like? And I described it to her very anecdotally, she responded, well, that's exactly the role we're trying to create here at Blue Flame. Would you ever consider working for Sean Combs? And I look at her like she has 7 heads, and I'm like, absolutely not, because I know, how hard he works and how driven he is about excellence and all of the things. And not that that's not a part of my story, but I just was very intimidated by, coming into that system and being effective. And so she's just like, we're creating an all-star team. We're really looking to do some different, unique things in the advertising space with our agency, disrupting with below the line strategy. And I really like what you're saying around paradigm building and being able to sort of socialize our capabilities and monetize our capabilities. So lo and behold, we create this role, the vice president of brand strategy at Blue Flame. And so I was able to move into a vice president role in marketing for an agency. And it was actually the best decision I've ever made in my career. I ultimately worked within the Combs Enterprise system for 9.5 years, and I was promoted 8 times. And I say that with pride because, that's not an easy feat, obviously, to be able to be anywhere for a decade, but particularly in an environment that thrived and was as fast paced as that one was. But not only stay there and remain there, continue to thrive and grow and excel. And what that afforded me was this unique intersectionality around brand building, around enterprise leadership, corporate management, and really understanding how companies and brands work across media, across consumer packaged goods, across entertainment, and all of these different platforms that were within the portfolio. So that's sort of the entirety of my professional career as it relates mostly to people I worked with. I moved on to work independently with a cannabis company as a CMO. I was actually the first African-American female CMO of a multi-state operator in the cannabis industry. I worked for Viola, which is a brand owned by Al Harrington, a former NBA player. And that was a tremendous opportunity to really learn about a unique industry that is still burgeoning. They are not federally regulated at the recreational level. And so, meaning cannabis isn't. And so it made a huge challenge to figure out how to create brand messaging and build a brand at a national level when you have very nuanced rules around how you can and can't promote that specific brand. And that was a lot of fun. I did that for about a year. And then I rotated out and did some other unique things. I started to really gravitate towards this sort of fractional leadership role. One of the things I noticed being at Combs is I enjoy building new things, helping to create the structure around those new things, putting the people in place to help guide them, and then moving on to the next thing. That was what I was really good at there. And I really thrived in those environments. And so I figured I want to utilize my skills in that way moving forward on my terms and by my rules. And so I did a lot of fractional leadership and interim executive solutions for different companies and people, like with BET and Scott Mills on his BET Experience business. I worked with Lena Waithe on her corporate build out for Hillman Grad. I worked with Halle Berry on her wellness digital space called Respin, and a number of other really interesting dynamic projects over the last, I'd say, 3 to 5 years. And I am really thriving in that space and loving it.
I love it. I love it. But I also heard, I might have seen, that there's a book that you may have written. And I'd love you to share.
Thank you, Laura, so much. This is why you need good sister friends, right? Because I never lead with I'm an author. So thank you for that. Yeah. In the midst of tackling corporate America, I actually wrote a book called What Mommy Never Told You: A Woman's Guide to the Next Phase of Life. And I like to say it's 1 part memoir, 2 parts self-help. And it's a project that took about 12 years to complete. I published it about 3 years ago. Last year, I published the audiobook. And we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of the project on March 5th. So I'm very excited about that. But the book is amazing. It's about my life. A lot of people ask me a lot of the questions that we're talking about here, how I got to where I am, the decisions I made along the way, the obstacles, the triumphs, and all of the things. And I decided to put it in one centralized place, but do it in a way that is dialogue and exchange, thought generating, so that people can think about how they can apply my experiences to their own lives to see if they might be able to avoid some mistakes or, skip the line on a few lessons that we all inevitably learn.
I love it. And there's so many wonderful lessons that your book shares, because I think, and as part of why I'm doing tonight is to share our stories about what we have experienced so that we can help other folks. And even if it's just to read and absorb it all, will mean so much to folks, because everyone has similar experiences in different shapes and sizes. But once you see somebody else made it through, and they made it through, and they made it through, it gives you that fuel and that fire to keep going, even when you have those challenges.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I named the book on purpose. My mom was slightly offended when she first heard the name, because it's called What Mommy Never Told You: A Woman's Guide to the Next Phase of Life. And my mom's like, well, I did the best I could. I mean, what do you mean what I didn't tell you? What did I tell you? And I'm like, Mom, I was like, you need to read the book. And when she read it, she was in tears, because the reality is it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, because while there are a number of lessons that I think we all learn on our own, particularly for myself as a first generation kid, I did a lot of things as a first in my family. So there were a lot of experiences, and still are some experiences I'm embarking on that my family can't really give me guidance on, because they've never dealt with it. And what I found is the foundational things that my mother did give me are exactly what I need to go out and thrive on my own and make those self-discoveries on my own. And, that's sort of what the ethos of what the book represents. But also, I think what you said is spot on, Laura. We need representation. We need to be able to cite data points of the things that we may be thinking of or dreaming of. And, not everything is going to exist, right? Because we innovate and create new things like the iPhone, right? Steve Jobs didn't have the iPhone to reference when he was creating it. But we do need to be able to see ourselves in other people and see our journeys in other people so that we can perhaps see how we might be able to succeed on our own. And hopefully that's what the book creates for the readers.
It definitely does. And it is the ability to dream and to dream big and to dream wide and to dream deep. And allow folks to realize that there's so many different paths to getting there. There is no one, here is the 101 of how to do this. No, it is, you will come across amazing people in your life, like we both knew Amani, and there will be people who will be cheering for you in rooms that you never knew even existed. But because they knew that you were awesome, they like tap folks on the shoulder and said, yeah, Ericka's the one. And that means so much. And it also is wonderful to see that that is possible.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you know, what you said about Amani is really brilliant, right? Because it does have that butterfly effect. Like Amani was a pivotal player in the catalyst of my career trajectory, like a pivotal player, right? Like her sitting down with me and agreeing to have an exploratory informational interview, that in itself was, you know, so magnanimous, if you will, was so, you know, charitable and you know, generous. But when we sat down, she was quickly able to see my skill set and a need that she had internally to figure out how we could connect the dots and get really creative and unique ways to create something new. So she was brave, she was generous, she was all of these things that changed my life. You know, working within that institution for almost a decade, I just said this morning, you know, was one of the greatest decisions I ever made. It was probably one of the most challenging and difficult roles I've ever had, but it was my biggest learning moment as well. And I think it has hands down shaped me as the professional that I am today. And if it were not for her, that probably would have shown up a little bit differently. So those moments in the book are important because not only does it show the reader that those opportunities exist, it leaves us with the responsibility to make sure that we're doing that for others as well.
We must keep the door open and we must keep chatting with folks and letting folks know that there's a million ways to figure it all out.
That's right.
Thinking about all the really awesome things you've done, what do you think you'd probably tell 18-year-old Ericka?
Oh, I always love this question. You know, the one thing that I would say is everything works out in the end. Everything is figure outable. Maria Forleo, I think that's the name of her book, but everything is figure outable, right? That and fail fast. I think I was very afraid to fail as a young woman, and so I was incredibly risk averse, and so I would take limited, you know, risks around choices and decisions and, you know, not really stepping out on faith and taking the big leaps that you kind of need to take to expand and grow. And while that doesn't mean be irresponsible with your decision making, it does mean that if an opportunity presents itself, sometimes you have to say yes and figure it out as you go along. You don't have to have every data point in place before you make a, you know, a sound decision about, you know, a thing or, you know, an opportunity.
It's so true. I think that needs to be a word in Webster's dictionary. Figure it out a goal because like it's true. You will figure it out. Come hell or high water, you will find a way. And
Yep.
you know, even though the journey might be challenging and scary sometimes, you do find a way. And with all the really awesome stuff that you're doing right now, like what does Ericka do for Ericka? Like what do you do for your self care?
Well, I'm a big self-care girly. And you know, I love this whole journey around feminine energy, which I have a chapter about in my book, talking about, you know, feminine energy versus sexual energy and the difference in both, you know, both impacts. But nonetheless, I've been very, very into self-care for a long time. Being a single woman and head of household and, you know, a family of one, I am responsible for every single thing in my life, right? And there's not always someone to come home to rattle an idea off to, or to vent about a day at work, or to make a, you know, big life decision. Everything is kind of in solo, which for me has been fantastic and been a wonderful life experience. But it can be it can be a little singular and isolated at the same time, right? And so finding ways to create internal outlets was very important. So to answer your question, Ever since I moved to LA in 2015, I hike regularly. Like I'm outdoors as much as possible because we have this 72 and sunny thing in Los Angeles where it's mostly sunny and warm. So I always say it's really hard to be depressed in LA because you just walk outside and it's a wonderful temperature. So I do a lot of outdoors things, and being in nature I think is really helpful. I journal a lot. And I've gotten really good at meditating. When I started out, I couldn't meditate for longer than 30 seconds without my brain going somewhere else and getting distracted. But now, I can meditate for 30 to 45 minutes. I can take meditation breaks for 5 or 10 minutes, and they really ground me and center me. And then exercise. I don't exercise as frequently as I would like to, but I do find a lot of joy and outlet in that. And then just your girly things, your self-care, facials, mani-pedis, hair, all of those other yummy girly things that we like to do.
Which are important to make us feel good. I'm
Yep.
a firm believer that go get a manicure and go have a 90-minute massage, not 60-minute massage.
That's
because
right.
it's necessary. It is fully necessary. Like you should treat yourself well. How are you going to treat others well if you don't treat yourself well?
That's a very good point, Laura. And I was even going to add to that. Sometimes you have to go get a $10 bouquet of flowers from Trader Joe's or the Flower Mart, right? But just loving on yourself in an intentional way. And that's a new phenomenon for me. I never realized the level of literally, like the level of the direction around loving yourself. It literally means like writing yourself a love letter, speaking lovingly to yourself, doing some of the loving things that you want to show up in your life, treating yourself the way you expect others to treat you. It really starts from within, and the world naturally starts to, sort of permeate and bend to the will of the way that you command. It starts with self. So you're right, carving out that time and taking the extra 30 minutes on your massage because you deserve it.
You deserve it. You definitely do. Like I read an article once and I was like, oh, you know what? I will do the extra 30 minutes. Like,
Good for you.
good. It's an imperative. Now, last question for you. Do you have a give and or ask of the audience?
Do I have a give and an ask? That is a brilliant question. Well, I hope that I'm giving some sage advice and wisdom and indication of, we're all human, we're all figuring this thing out. And as the listeners continue to, remain curious and want to learn about new journeys and new perspective, I hope that they're able to gain something from this conversation. I would ask to that end, which would also be a give, hopefully, is that the listeners purchase the book. There's a lot to be learned and a lot to be acquired from the book, and I'm always encouraging people to exchange thoughts and ideas around it. So I would love that in return.
Awesome. Wonderful. We'll put all the details in the show notes for folks to find places where they can buy your awesome, awesome book. And Ericka, thank you so much for being part of 29 Days of Magic. I always love the serendipity of the moment where I'm like, oh, wait, duh, Ericka. Or somebody, like, let me hit her up.
I love that. And I love that we were able to make it work.
I know. Because let's do it this right second now. But it's you have such an amazing story and you're such a delight, and you show what's possible, which is so important for folks to see. And I do love the power of serendipity and the through line of really dope Black women through your universe who have helped you along the way, and how you give those folks their flowers, and how you are just continuing that to bloom that by this amazing book that you've written. So thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Thank you so much, Laura. And anything I can do to continue to help to socialize, I will. And I am so excited to be a part of the community. And thank you for thinking of me.
Awesome. Thank you. And that is our show.